Chapter 27. After the fierce storms of winter came many days when the wind did not blow. The air was so heavy it was hard to breathe, and the sun so hot that the sea was like a sun itself, too bright to look at. The first day of this weather, I took the canoe from the cave and paddled around the reef to the sandspit. I did not take Rontuaru with me, for while he liked the cold, he did not like heat. It was good that he did not come with me. The day was the hottest of all, and the sea shimmered with red light. Over my eyes I wore shields made of wood, with small slits in them to see through. No gulls were flying, the otter lay quiet in the kelp, and the little crabs were deep in their holes. I pulled the canoe up on the beach, which was wet but beaming from the sun. Early, early every spring, I took the canoe to the sandspit and spread fish pitch in the cracks that needed it. I worked all this morning, stopping from time to time to cool off in the sea. As the sun climbed high, I turned the canoe over and crawled under it and went to sleep in the shade. I had not slept long when I was suddenly awakened by what I thought was thunder, but upon looking out from my shelter, I saw there were no clouds in the sky. Yet the rumbling sound kept on. It came from a distance, from the south, and as I listened, it grew louder. I jumped to my feet. The first thing that caught my gaze was the gleaming stretch of beach and the southern slope of the sandspit. Never in my life on the island had I seen the tide so low. Rocks and small reefs that I did not know were under the sea stood bare in the blinding light. It was like another place. I had gone to sleep and wakened on another island. The air was suddenly tight around me. There was a faint sound as if some giant animal were sucking the air in and through its teeth. The rumbling came closer out of the empty sky, filling my ears. Then beyond the gleam of the beach and the bare rocks and reefs, more than a league beyond them, I saw a great white crest moving up and down upon the island. It seemed to move slowly between the sea and the sky, but it was the sea itself. I tore off the shields I wore over my eyes. In terror, I ran along the sandspit. I ran and stumbled and got up and ran again. The sand shuddered under my feet if as the first wave struck. Spray fell around me like rain. It was filled with pieces of kelp and small fish. By following the curve of the sandspit, I could reach the cove and the trail that led to the mesa, but there was no time for this. Water was already rushing around my knees, pulling from every direction. The cliff rose in front of me, and though the rocks were slippery with sea moss, I found a hold for a hand and then a foot. Thus, a step at a time, I dragged myself upward. The crest of the wave passed under me and roared on toward Coral Cove. For a time there was no sound. Then the sea began to seek its old place, running backward in long, foaming currents. Before it could do so, another great wave moved out of the south. Perhaps it would be even bigger than the first one. I looked up. The cliff rose straight above me. I could climb no further. I stood facing the rock with my feet on a narrow ledge and one hand thrust deep into a crack. Over my shoulder, I could see the wave coming. It did not come fast, for the other wave was still running out. For a while, I thought it would not come at all because the two suddenly met beyond the sandspit. The first wave was trying to reach the sea, and the second one was struggling toward the shore. Like two giants, they crashed against each other. They rose high in the air, bending first one way and then the other. There was a roar as if great spears were breaking in battle, and in the red light of the sun, the spray that flew around them looked like blood. Slowly, the second wave forced the first one backward, rode slowly over it, and then, as a victor drags the vanished, moved in toward the island. The waves struck the cliff. It sent long tongues streaming around me that I could neither see nor hear. The tongues of water licked into all the crevices, dragged at my hand and at my bare feet gripping the ledge. They rose high above me, the face of the rock, and up, and then spent themselves against the sky and fell back, hissing past me to join the water rushing on toward the cove. Suddenly, all around me was quiet. In the quiet, I could hear my heart pounding, and I knew that my hand still had its hold on the rock and that I was alive. Night came, and though I was afraid to leave the cliff, I knew I could never stay there until morning, that I would go to sleep and fall. Neither could I find my way home, so I climbed down from the ledge and crouched at the foot of the cliff. Dawn was windless and hot. The sandspit was strewn with hills of kelp. Dead fish and lobsters and pink crabs lay everywhere, and two small whales were stranded against the rock walls of the cove. Far up the trail that led to the mesa, I found things from the sea. Huntuaru was waiting at the fence. When I crawled under it, he jumped upon me and followed me around, never letting me out of his sight. I was glad to be home on the high headland where the waves had not come. I had been gone only from one sun to the next, yet it was like many suns, like the time I had gone away in the canoe. Most of the day I slept, but I had many dreams, and when I woke up, everything around me was strange. The sea made no sounds on the shore, the gulls were quiet, the earth seemed to be holding its breath, as though it were waiting for something terrible to happen. At dusk, I was coming back from the spring with a basket of water on my shoulder, walking along the cliff with Rontuadu. Everywhere, the ocean was smooth and yellow, and it lay against the island as if it were very tired. The gulls were still quiet, perched on their rocky nests. Slowly, the earth began to move. It moved away from my feet for a moment. I seemed to be standing in the air. Water tipped out of the basket and trickled over my face. Then the basket fell to the ground. Not knowing what I did, thinking foolishly that another wave was upon me, I began to run. But it was a wave of earth, and it rippled under me along the cliff. As I ran, another wave overtook me. Looking back, I saw many of them coming out of the south like waves in the sea. The next thing I remember, I was lying on the ground and Rontuartu was beside me, and we were both trying to get on our feet. Then we were running again toward the headland, toward a house that kept moving off into the distance. The opening under the fence had caved in to pull the rocks away before we could crawl through. Night came, but the earth still rose and felt like a great animal breathing. I could hear rocks tumbling from the cliff, falling down into the sea. All night as we lay there in the house, the earth trembled and rocks fell, yet not the big one on the headland, which would have fallen if those who made the world shake had really been angry with us. In the morning, the earth was quiet once more, and the fresh wind that smelled of kelp blew out of the northern sea.